tomorrow with the President of the Court, with a small group of congressmen from the Republican Party, especially discussing the International Criminal Court position, the idea behind it. And so my delegation, and many of them are here present today, we are very curious where that leads us or them. We don't know at this stage. But thank you for the invitation. I shall be very, very brief, and I know that there are some very typically Dutch questions to be asked. I've already heard that. That's a bad mic, I heard. See. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully my fellow Dutchmen know his name, but do you know Gijsbert Karel van Hogendorp? He was the man who gave the Netherlands its constitution, which, together with the American Constitution, is one of the oldest existing constitutions in the world. Van Hogendorp was one of the founding fathers of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which is celebrating its bicentenary in the Kingdom next year in 2013. 30 years before 1813, Van Hogendorp in that time, in his 20s, traveled to the United States, where he became friends with no less one than the later President Thomas Jefferson. And 125 years later, another president, President Theodore Roosevelt, made the journey in an opposite direction. He arrived in The Hague in 1907 for the second peace conference, which he himself had initiated. Roosevelt and Carnegie, I will mention him a little bit later on, were quite important for the present position of The Hague as the legal capital of the world, and in fact the second United Nations city, since the most important second body, you could say, of the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, is The Hague is home to this very important court, one of the principal bodies, as it mentions in the Charter of the United Nations. In 1907, the foundation stone for the Peace Palace was laid, and the building, the Peace Palace, icon for the City of The Hague, was completed in 1913. This palace is icon symbol of The Hague as the city of the legal capital of the world. And as I already mentioned, the Peace Palace couldn't have been without the contribution of the philanthropist Carnegie. We just with a few of our delegation visited the beautiful mansion in the 91st Street here in New York, at present under renovation. In The Hague at present, thanks to this history of the City of The Hague, around, well, let's say 18,000 people are working day in, day out, and then I don't count those who work in international business in The Hague, because then that's more or less 10% of the inhabitants of The Hague, 500,000 inhabitants, but 18,000 people are linked to, let's say, a mission to create a better world. A world without chemical weapons. A world where conflicts are resolved in court instead of in the battlefield. A world in which people can live in freedom from fear, to use the famous words of President Delano Roosevelt in his 41 for Freedoms speech. The ties between the Netherlands, and especially The Hague, and the United States, in my view, become ever closer since then. And this also includes the economic ties between the city and the Hague region, 1.2 million, and the United States business community. Around 80 American investment projects have been attracted to the region. There are currently 50 businesses registered in The Hague whose parent companies are in the United States. And these businesses have created over the past years a total of more than 2,000 jobs in The Hague and the Hague region. And American companies are, it's more or less a new element in the, let's say, the internationalizing position of the City of The Hague. American companies are playing an increasingly significant role in the construction of the so-called The Hague Security Delta Cluster, dealing with a new phenomenon in criminality, cyber crime. And it is exactly this day that the European Commission has decided that the European Cybercrime Center will be established in the city of The Hague, which is the next European institution being established in The Hague next to Eurojust and Europol. The Hague has become, over the years, you could say, some sort of a hub of knowledge of international law. And the interesting thing is that there is a combination, let's say, between the business community in The Hague and this community dealing with international law. I discussed already with one of you the importance of Hugo de Groot. Hugo Grootjes, as without any doubt you say here in the state. But Hugo de Groot, the father of international law, and we keep mentioning him. In his famous book, Mare Liberum, he argued that the international community did not by any means consist only of states, but also of individuals, businesses, and groups that we today would describe as non-state actors. NGOs, for instance, as well. And the presence of these international organizations, NGOs, and numerous important companies, take for instance Shell, of course, headquarters are in, the main headquarters are in The Hague, makes The Hague, I think, a good reflection of the diversity of actors in the international community, consisting of people dealing with law, international law and business. And there is, as you said, Mr. Chair, an enormous, well, interconnection between the two. And you see the same, when you live here in this beautiful, vibrant city, but you see, in fact, the same here in this city, fascinating city of New York. You could say, like here, but the worlds of the international commerce and the international law community meet in The Hague. And it is more or less, I think, a logical relationship as well. And it was, in fact, stated by the first and thus far, unfortunately, only winner of the Nobel Peace Prize of Dutch origin, Tobias Asser. He was the founder of the Hague Conference on Private International Law. Mr. Van Loon is here present today. He was, besides that, an academic and an entrepreneur. And to this day, in my view, is internationally oriented and, let's say, practical spirit is an inspiration to all in the city of The Hague, and maybe that spirit connects the city of The Hague with the city of New York.